Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm Patty and I go by Pattymac Makes everywhere online. The view today is of my cutting table. It's also my sewing table, and we are looking at 3 strips of fabric, and they're each cut 1.5 inches wide. And we are going to use these to make sure we have the correct 1/4 inch seam set up on our sewing machine. And if you have done any type of quilting at all, you will know the 1/4 inch seam it's everything. And it takes a little practice to get it. You're just going to have to work on that. And yeah, so this exercise is designed to help you with that and to make sure that you are getting an accurate seam. If you don't have accurate seams when you're sewing, especially in a quilt, your things are not going to line up. And we want all of our pieces to line up, and that's how we get our nice little crisp corners and points and stars and all of that. So it starts here. I've cut these 3 strips, and they are 1.5 inches wide, and I can check them with my seam guide. If I lay the seam guide, it is 1.5, 1.5, and 1.5. And we want this because what we're going to do is we're going to sew the dark to the light in the middle using the 1/4 inch seam, and then when we open it up, if everything is correct, this will measure 1 inch. So let's hope that we have it, because I'm doing this for you live on camera. So okay, let me show you my setup on the sewing machine so you can see how I'm doing this. Here we are close up looking at the sewing space of my sewing machine, and this is my Singer Patchwork. I love this machine. It is designed to be like a beginner's quilting machine, like an entry-level quilting machine, if you will. I think it's wonderful. So let me show you how I'm going to make sure I get my 1/4 inch seam lined up and done correctly. I have a couple of things here to help me. The first thing I have is here I have a line, and that is to mark the 1/4 inch seam, and you can see they've also notched it in the throat plate for me. Now if I wanted to, I could run a piece of tape along here to give me even more space to make sure that I have that lined up, but I'm not going to worry about that for right now because we're just doing small pieces. If I was doing maybe like a long row of putting blocks together, then I might go ahead and just give myself a little more space. And I would also, if I was doing a bigger piece, go ahead and install the extension table. But today we're just going to use the machine as a machine with the regular setup. So I have this line that helps, and I have this notch, and that helps. And then I have installed this special presser foot, which is the 1/4 inch seam foot, and I really like this thing. But the way this is set up is it has a little piece of metal that extends out here, and it gives you like a little area to butt the fabric up next to, and it lines up perfectly with this line and this line. And so if you are feeding your fabric in correctly here, you can keep it straight as it goes under the needle. And you can see that it's critical that you have your needle in the proper position, because there's only one place for it to go, and it's right in there. And if I have my side to side not correct, then I'm going to risk damaging my needle, and we don't want to do that, because if you break the needle and damage the needle, you can actually damage this whole thread housing, so we don't want to do that. So all right, there's your close-up view. I'm going to now change the angle, and let's sew that little strip, and we'll come back and measure and see what we have. So you can see I've got a leader piece set up there, which I like to do when I'm piecing, and we're going to sew this just as though we were piecing. So we put our little strip here. I'm going to raise my presser foot, and make sure I'm just butted up against that little piece right here, and I'm lined up on my markings here, and we're going to go ahead and sew. Okay, there's our piece. So what we're going to do is I'm going to press it so it's pressed like it should be, and then we're going to come back and we're going to make sure that that's an inch. All right, be right back. Our sample has been all pressed out, and you can see that I've got it here on the cutting mat, and if I line up my top and my bottom, I am an inch at the top and the bottom. So we do have an accurate 1/4 inch seam, and we can put this in here and just check, and there's an inch. And if I come up to the top, let's see here, that's also an inch. I mean, it's kind of a fiddly little step, but you do want to do it and make sure that you have your seam right. On the back, where you can see your stitch line, I have this triangle that will give me a 1/4 inch measurement. And what I do is I line up this black line. I line up this black line right here, and then from that line to the edge is a 1/4 inch. And this is a nice way for you to just kind of look and just double check your seams. It's like nice and lined up here on the edge. So this little triangle, now this thing was not cheap. It's from Creative Grids. I actually picked this one up in my local, actually the sewing machine store is where I got it. So I wouldn't say my quilt shop, but the sewing machine store had it. And I have really liked using this because it gives me the 45-degree lines. It's helped me with my triangles. Obviously, that's really what it's designed for, but also having this way of double checking that 1/4 inch is really super nice. And so you can see that this just lines up beautifully. That's a test that we can do to make sure that we're getting an accurate 1/4 inch seam. So I hope that is helpful to you. It's just always a good idea to double check and make sure that you have your 1/4 inch seams right on the money. Anytime you start a new project, you're going to have new fabric and new thread and all of that, and just make sure before you really jump in and start sewing with great vim and vigor that you have all of your seams where they should be. So to recap, we want to make sure that we have our machine on a straight stitch. We want to make sure that we have it in the proper needle position, and for my presser foot, I have it in the proper position and it's right in the center where the needle goes down through that presser foot. And as I mentioned earlier, I am using my 1/4 inch foot, and I do have these markings. If you need to use painter's tape to indicate your 1/4 inch seam, you can do that. But for my machine, I have really liked having these already available to me. That is today's video on sewing a 1/4 inch seam and checking the 1/4 inch seam on your machine before you start a project. I hope it was helpful, and I hope that you learned a little something, and pop any questions you might have in the description below, and I will answer them the best that I can. And you know what? Happy sewing. I'll see you around in the next video.